Three, two, one. How y'all doing out there? James Caltestin, Twitter.com. We're going to quickly talk about the GOP debates and Donald Trump, his emergence in the polls. And Donald Trump, up till probably today, which is August 8th, has been leading in the polls by 20 percentage points by all the Republicans going second, third, and fourth. Now that gap, I believe, is a little closer to about 8% from his antics and being pretty much disrespectful towards Megyn Kelly on the internet, on Twitter, and also some of the other comments that he wrote, which kind of does show a little bit about his character, number one. Number two, a lot of the reports have been saying, or the one I just read from Jeffrey Levin on Twitter.com from the New York Times, that Fox, the three mediators, have the Republicans squirming. And if that's the case, then that was a good thing, because those questions needed to be asked whether they were on that platform or a different platform. I'm going to talk about the first 45 minutes of what I saw in that debate, starting with Donald Trump in the middle, getting most of the attention and airtime. A little bit uneasy about the immigration issue, wants to build a fence, and that's his position versus other alternatives. That was a very strong position in his campaign. The other candidates have their positions on that issue. The other part of the debates that was unique was when Christie and Rand Paul had a little argument of how they would wiretap Americans' phone calls, and that kind of went from Christie being the man who's in the position to make those decisions, and Rand Paul in the subcommittee, and that little insult was pretty funny, but that's not a funny issue. And right there, Christie showed a little bit strength, which was a good thing, something that we need from our party. A candidate with strength, a candidate that has the ability to speak up and say what he thinks is wrong. And that whole giving a hug to Barack Obama, Rand Paul, that really didn't score you any points. It made you look like you were trying to be a comedian when that thing wasn't funny whatsoever in any way, shape, or form. Then we have Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz looks really good on the platform. Ted Cruz is an intelligent candidate with a good following, and Ted Cruz is born in Canada. For a lot of people, that might be a problem, and that might be the difference of him winning the nomination. But other than the Canada issue, Ted Cruz is a very strong candidate. Marco Rubio, a very strong candidate. Jeb Bush, a very strong candidate. Then you had a couple of them that you have to actually go to the internet to find out what was his name. I'm going to talk about the first 45 minutes that I noticed that Ben Carson wasn't even asked a question, and other candidates had been asked two questions. It did seem that having Carly Fiorina not in the arena wasn't fair, not having a woman candidate present. A lady candidate would have been a very good thing on that debate, especially that night. Having Rick Santorum, Bobby Jindal not winning any appearance contests or good-looking contests, it seemed like the ones that were not allowed to come in, Rick Perry, Bobby Jindal, and Rick Santorum, they got the boot for a reason that I just don't have an explanation for. Perhaps they had to pay for their seat and they didn't have enough money raised for that seat, and the other candidates did. I don't want to speculate, but we're going to go back and talk about the debates and the post-debates and where Donald Trump really, he really cost himself, in my opinion, the election, at least in my book, where I was going to consider voting for Donald Trump if he became the nominee versus Hillary Clinton. But the more it seemed that he was talking and the more buddy-buddy that he is with the Clintons, it seems like maybe in the past they had a conversation in case Hillary was going to run down the line, Donald Trump to come in the mix to hurt the other Republicans trying to speak by taking first the airtime from the big media, which he's taken 50%, and then the other 9 candidates are getting pretty much very limited airtime, and not able to speak and get a real debate going. And then the entire thing was reversed by the media as if Megyn Kelly asked a couple of questions that were out of line. Number one, the question about Donald Trump's bankruptcy and having the investors lose billions of dollars was a fair question. The reason why it was a fair question was because the way Donald Trump reacted on the answer. He had different ways to answer the question, and I'm familiar enough to know at the stretch between 2006 in 2010, the bankruptcy laws did go in the favor in case you did lose your money during that stretch of the economy. Now, Donald Trump took advantage of those laws. Now, the question is, did he know that he was going to file for bankruptcy and then still brought those investors in and then took their money and then filed for bankruptcy, knowing that the law, there's ways that he can use the law to protect him or use for him? He said out of the millions or thousands of deals or hundreds of deals, he's done that 4 times. Now, I don't think that's a very trustworthy person to be able to handle not only the books, but also national security. Someone who's very quick on impulse and very angry at the first question that he disagrees with. It's very important. Now, Marco Rubio was very good at all the questions, and he seemed like out of all the candidates, him and maybe Ted Cruz had the most I kept their cool during the debate. But remember, Ted Cruz was born in Canada. The next thing I want to talk about is our national security and our national and the international crises that are going on, especially in Syria. That should be the number one priority, especially with this third party emerging, and as they're destroying cities and killing people. And it's something that needs to be addressed by this president. And this president has not only been a lame duck with foreign policy, but he seems that because he's done nothing, it's made the enemy be more bold at what they're doing, especially the news I'm reading today. It's just absolutely appalling, and it's absolutely atrocious that we have absolutely no strategy whatsoever since the re-election of Barack Obama in Syria. And to have the Iran deal, that's a whole different issue. Now, I want to talk about Donald Trump and him now as a Republican in those comments to Megyn Kelly. Now, we need the women vote, very important. We need the 18 to 25-year-old lady vote. We need the votes from 25 to 35, and we need the votes from 35 to 45, and et cetera, all the way to the 65 to 85 range. And the only way you're going to do that is by having a candidate that's nice and polite and talks good towards women. And what I noticed about Donald Trump, by saying just one simple insult to Megyn Kelly, and I'm not going to say the insult because it's already now known. And I'm one of the first people to start counter-tweeting that I disagreed with what was going on. And the reason why I think it's important is because that language does not represent the Republican Party. So what we want to do is Donald Trump wants to use the leverage by being a Republican because he's paying for the spots and he has the money and people giving him the money to be a Republican for some reason. He never was elected to any office in any district, not in Orange County, not in Atlantic City, not in Miami, not in Washington, not in Texas, not in Chicago, anywhere. He's a businessman, thus he needs to be running as an independent and allow the Republicans to get their nominee outside of Donald Trump. That way we could see who's voting for who now that Hillary Clinton is in the lead thanks to Donald Trump pretty much. The thing that's really bugging me about this is Hillary Clinton has the absolute worst possible record, and she's leading by 25 points simply because of the media not giving the information about some of the things that she did during George Bush's presidency, such as not reading the paperwork before putting her signature as senator in New York to go to the Iraq War. Why is that important? Because she's an author and she's asking you to buy her book and read her book. And you make her money by buying that book But when it came down to reading a certain amount of pages for the Iraq War, um, advantages and disadvantages that George Bush had in front, she just put her signature there and didn't read it. And that's very important. That's a very big flaw in her campaign, but it hasn't even been brought up in this campaign. Also, what happened in Libya. Since what's happened in Libya, the third party in Syria has emerged. No one likes to bring the link there, but there has to be some kind of link. And also today, Russia destroying all that food that they're banning and ruining food just shows what kind of people they are. And we need to deal with that. Anyone that would destroy food unless there was some kind of contamination, those kinds of people need to be addressed. Although there's a lot of protests going on, it almost looks like the Soviet Union has taken over Russia, using Iran and Syria as, what do you call them, patsies. And it's really important because that question was asked yesterday in the debate to one of the candidates about the Iraq War, and was it a mistake? Number one, it was not a mistake what George Bush did. He thought it was what he did at the time. That's in the past. But to sit there and say it was a mistake, what's going on in today's, after the president has been in office for 7 years, is just not a fair question, in my opinion, because the policy has changed. The one good thing that has emerged in Iraq is they have a stable government foundation that in the long run, the people will be able to use the three branches of government to have capitalism, something that's not been talked about. They have problems in their cities because of the lack of security that's been given to them by other parties. Now we're going to talk about Donald Trump and how he needs to be, first of all, asked to leave the Republican Party. Or I'm going to ask Amin Abramoff here in San Fernando to file paperwork to remove him legally as a Republican so he could become an independent. Number one, I'm a registered Republican. I re-registered as a Republican the day Obama signed and Obamacare occurred. It was either the next day or within 3 or 4 days. I was a Republican from independent. I went independent when George Bush was president, but now I'm a Republican, and I was Republican last time I voted for Mitt Romney. It's very important that I remain as a Republican, and I want to remain as a Republican, but if Donald Trump's going to be our candidate, it could or may force me to register as an I, and that's something that assists Hillary Clinton immediately. Number one. I'm not going to react right away. I'm going to wait to see how things occur, and I'm going to stay loyal to my party because I'm the one that made all this happen in certain ways after George Bush left office and the Republicans were at 9%, not even 10%, while I was handing out my flyers and had my blogs and using my own money for gas and published my own books, and I was doing my best to show what was the economy before this entire mess of Barack Obama, which was also forecast. In my third book, James' Republican Strategy, The State of the Union 3, seems like Donald Trump has taken one of my ideas to use or become a Republican to become a leader in this country by getting the votes, because I figured out a way to beat the Democrats, but I had yet to publish it. He might have used half that book, got the idea. It doesn't matter. Under this president, I haven't been publishing pretty much anything besides sports, if that, since the BP oil spill, because this administration has been completely callous on foreign policy, and I just felt not only intimidated, but I didn't feel comfortable doing even an economic report by all the money they were spending from stimulus to Obamacare and then ripping off different big organizations, something that Mike Huckabee was talking about, Medicare, taking $700 billion out of Medicare to pay for Obamacare for a few years. That was wrong, and that's something that needs to be looked into. Now we're going to talk about Donald Trump. Donald, I'm asking you to please leave the Republican Party, and also I'm asking you to apologize for your tweets towards Megyn Kelly. That was a very fair question. The questions that I heard, the first three, I saw your stances. You ripped off those people. Yeah, they were killers. They were sharks. But the voters are also sharks. And the voters are also demanding, and the voters also have their money together and they want a candidate that they can have represent them to challenge the Democrats, whether it's Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, or Bernie Sanders, an independent. Maybe if Donald Trump ran versus Bernie Sanders as an independent, he would lose and not even be in the top three. That is James Caltestin, Twitter.com. First thing I'm going to do is, if Donald Trump is the Republican nomination, I'm going to have to re-register as an independent. Now, if the Republicans are probably forecasting that that some people do not want to vote for Donald Trump, what that's going to do is only help Hillary Clinton. Donald, you are helping Hillary Clinton just by your presence on the field. What you need to do, Donald, is just take a buyout or cash out, which what I think you're trying to do. This is all an investment towards making a bigger buyout. So someone's either going to have to come up with the money to buy you out of the campaign, or you're going to have to re-register as an independent. James Caltestin, Twitter.com. Thank you very much. That is take one.